So Resident Evil Village is upon us. I'm sure we've all played it at this point. If you haven't, don't worry. I will not be putting any spoilers in. I won't talk spoilers. The footage you're seeing is from the very beginning of the game. So you're not seeing anything that's like... I wouldn't even class it as spoilers, to be honest. Everybody needs to see something of the game before they buy it, right? So you're just seeing stuff that should be fine, right? No complaints. And I won't say anything. How do I feel about Resident Evil Village? I think it's a good game. If I had to give it a score, which I don't like scores, I think a review should literally say buy or don't buy. I would give it roughly an 8.5. Yeah, probably an 8.5. It's definitely not top tier Resident Evil. It's not. It doesn't even break into the top 5. It doesn't. Is it in the top 10? Maybe. There's a lot of Resident Evil games at this point. What I'm trying to say is the game's good. If you're on the fence about it, it's a good game. Is it scary? It's as scary as Resident Evil 7 was, which basically to me means not really. However, there was one section in the game, I'm not gonna lie, shit your pants good. It really was good. That entire section is scarier than anything in Resident Evil 7. Just to put that out there too, because I've seen some people say that Resident Evil Village isn't as scary as 7 because of something one of the producers have said in an interview, which is just, it just isn't true. Sorry, it just isn't true. So why the 8.5, you're probably wondering. You're like, why 8.5? Why not 10? Why we're not going above and beyond, right? From a gameplay standpoint, which, you know me, I'm all about that gameplay. This is why the game's got a high score. It's really good. I had a fun time with it. Would I call it a survival horror game? Absolutely not. I don't care if you've got an inventory. You don't even have the inventory boxes. That's gone. So you don't even have to worry about picking stuff up. Ever. You don't have to worry about ammo. Ever. And there's plenty of combat. So what would I call this game? Just like games like Dead Space, The Evil Within, Resident Evil 4, I would call it action horror. Or horror action, depending on what you want to call it. Definitely more action than a survival horror should really have, to be honest. Am I complaining about that? No, because if you know me, you know my favourite genre is the action horror genre. My favourite games are action horror games. That doesn't mean I don't appreciate a good survival horror game. But this ain't that. This is no Remake 2. This is Resident Evil 4. But in first person. Now the 8.5 all comes down to the storyline. Now, if you know me, you know I don't really care about storylines, and some people are going to be like, what? Who plays Resident Evil for the storyline? I get that, trust me, I get that. It's a very silly storyline, but there's some story threads that I do like to follow, and I do like it to at least make sense. Resident Evil Village is one of those games where you're engaged to play it. You're like, yes, let's get through the game. I want to see what happens next. And then you sit down, like, after doing it, and you think about it, and you kind of go, wait a second, but no, that doesn't make sense. Wait, what? You get what I'm saying? Now, I'm not going to go into it too much detail. I'll do a spoiler video on it, where I really will go in depth with this stuff, because it's hurting my head thinking about it, to be honest. I've been thinking about it for the last few days, and it's just like, what? But anyway, the game's broken up into different sections, and it feels that way, if I'm being honest. The gameplay definitely isn't repetitive, so it's definitely a good thing. Like, there's certain sections in the game, for example, at the start, you've got that, like, it kind of starts like Resident Evil 4, you know, obviously you go to the village and then the villagers attack you. You kind of go into the village and then the Lycans attack you. It's very similar in that, and you've just got to kind of survive until they all leave. Very similar. But basically, you're in the village. It's a hub section of the game. and that leads to the different sections for the different boss encounters. It does. And we all know Lady Dimitrescu is like the mascot of this game. She's the poster girl. She's the billboard. She's in the game for like an hour. Like, I don't think Capcom knew how big she was gonna be. And let me just go on record and say she's the worst stalker yet. You remember last year Resident Evil 3 Remake came out, and we all expected Nemesis to be the best stalker, seeing as though he's the original Resident Evil stalker. We expected him to be like this absolute monster, and you were going to be shitting your pants, and he runs at you and he's unstoppable, and it just turns out he's really bad. Well, Lady D is worse. She's way slower. There's nothing to fear with her. She just looks really good. Sorry to break it to you, but if you're buying this game for Lady D, she's really not in it that much, to be honest. You've got a boss encounter with her, yada yada yada. But basically that's how the games work. You'll spend like an hour in maybe like the environment to each lord. Some of them might go on longer, some of them might be short, obviously I won't say. But that's just how the game is broken up into different sections. It is. The guns you get in the game, I don't like the selection, and I definitely don't like the balancing. It feels like, for example, here's a good example, right? You get a pistol given to you at the start of the game. You do. It's bare bones, got so many rounds in it, yada yada yada. Then you get a 45 later, and it has way more power. Well, not way more, but it has more power, but less capacity. So you're like, do I really want to be reloading it all the time? And then you're like, I'm not too sure about that. But then you get a part that goes on your older gun, and all of a sudden the 45 is redundant. So then you're thinking, hang on, what about that merchant guy? Yes, the Duke. The Duke comes into it. You can upgrade these weapons. However, the starting pistol's still more powerful. Do you get what I mean? So the balancing in this game is all over the place with guns. Everything in all the, like Resident Evil 4, it always felt viable to keep a different gun, if you know what I mean. Like if you wanted to keep the first shotgun over whatever, because once you upgraded them all, you got that like exclusive upgrade. And that's what this game's missing, to be honest. It doesn't have any kind of like exclusive to each gun. Maybe there's some kind of hidden underlying like number thing to do with the gun that we can't see on like the stat level. But it is what it is. You can't say that stuff. So I'm just assuming that the balancing's really bad just from looking at the numbers that the game displays to you. So, and I mean, the selection, like I said, it's not my style. It just doesn't, I don't feel like it fits with the theme of the game. It just doesn't. Should have like revolvers and stuff, bolt action. Nothing should be like semi-automatic. It just shouldn't be a thing. What else? Music. Don't remember any of it. There's not really anything there. It's all atmospheric noises. There's one soundtrack that you've heard in the trailer that plays later on in the game. Obviously, that's kind of cool. And then you've got the save room theme, which is like, it's not that good. It's not, and it only, when it plays, you really can't hear it. It's not as good as the classics. It's not as good as Resident Evil 7's. Just a bit boring, to be honest. So the soundtrack's weak. There's no getting around that. It's not, but I don't expect it to be good. I don't think, like, with soundtracks for horror games, you've got to be careful, because if you do too much music, you run the risk of sounding like a damn disco. You do, and that's not scary. You need like certain types of music to play. Resident Evil Remake and Resident Evil 1 had the soundtracks down to a T. Obviously Resident Evil 2 did a decent one too, and 3's okay. Hell, even Code Veronica's got such an underrated soundtrack. But then like, they were using that because the game couldn't convey any kind of terror to you, if you know what I mean. Like, if you took the soundtracks out of those games, they wouldn't be anywhere near as scary, while this doesn't need the soundtrack to be scary. Does that make sense? I'm sure that makes sense. Would it help if it had a soundtrack? Maybe in some sections. It would help, but it doesn't add anything to the game, and I can see why they don't do it anymore. They don't. But I'm pretty sure that's it, right? We pretty much covered everything that needs to be covered. Resident Evil Village is a really good game. You should absolutely buy it. Should you expect it to be the best game ever? No. But it's a damn good one. A really good one. That's all I got. I'll catch you later.